You are listening to the Primitive Intelligence Podcast, episode 514, The Yellow Book and Other Serpo Observations. Did you get a chance to listen to last week's?
I did. It was a bit of a roller coaster.
It's definitely a roller
just
coaster.
When I thought it might get boring, it wasn't. It was quite the adventure.
It is a story. Now, I've heard this story since, I think the website that's now gone, that Project Serpo, I think that they put that up in the early 2000s, but I swear I saw forum posts of some of the story back in the late 90s. So this has been around for a while, this story. But yeah, there's a lot of other crazy things. So we'll get into the Yellow Book and some of these other things that I read about and listened to, because I did listen to an audiobook too. The story is crazy. I'm not saying that I think any of this actually happened, but there's so much information and it's so detailed. I don't know who the hell would have time to make up all this. I really don't. So this is just one of those stories where I'm going to give you the story, and it's up to you to decide if you think it's true or you think it's BS. That's just how this one's going to be. Do you have anything for this week, or are you just along for the ride on this one?
I'm along for the ride.
Okay, that's good, because there's enough here to keep us busy. So Rocco's back, and you got me. We're going to get started with episode 514 of the Primitive Intelligence Podcast. That starts
now.
So I thought I had this all figured out. When I got to like 25% of the way through the book last week, and I kind of scanned ahead and I saw that they were talking about this Yellow Book, and it looked like it had a whole bunch of information on it. So I figured I would, as I was working, I would pull up an audiobook and listen to some more information about the Project Serpo and about this trip they took to this planet. And I listened to, I don't know, 3 hours of this book. I got about 9 chapters in, and they never even got to the trip. It was all the precursor of why the United States acted the way they did towards these aliens, and how this all came about and why it was beneficial. So what I originally thought we were going to talk about was just the Yellow Book. Now, the Yellow Book isn't an actual book. It is, according to these releases, it is an 8 by 11 by 2.5 inch plexiglass-like device. It's clear. It's got yellow edges, which is where it gets its name from. And in order to activate it, you have to look at it, like get your face near it, and it can tell the language that the user speaks and will translate on the fly and show the information holographically inside of this device. Now, the device is the history of the Eben culture, of the Eben race, most of the history of the universe, and history of planet Earth, because the Ebens claimed to have been coming here for 5,000 years.
You know,
so
I was looking for a book that contained the entirety of the information in the universe. So I'm glad we got that down. Now we know where to find it.
Well, we know it exists. Well, they say it exists, but there's a catch, and I'll talk about that. The other book that they reference is the Red Book. Now, the Red Book is written by humans. It is the cataloged experiences of the U.S. government and its agencies with UFOs and extraterrestrial encounters. It is updated every 5 years, so they do it in like volumes, and they'll write the information down, but they wait every 5 years, and then they try to get as much information as they can to verify what they can, and then whatever they can verify goes into the book. So this is similar to like Project Blue Book, where all this information was held, and they did the investigation. And now we've got like the AARO, which is compiling all this information as well from sightings, mostly from military and commercial pilots. So this isn't anything really new, but this is, the department that handles it is the Defense Intelligence Agency, the DIA. They're the ones who basically are the caretakers of this book. And that's what I thought everything was going to be about as I was going through this. But like I said, I started initially with the book Project Serpo, The Top Secret Human Exchange Program by Richard J. Dempsey. That's the book I started with last week. And then this week I listened to about 9 chapters of Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, A True Story of Interplanetary Travel by Len Kasten. Now, like I said, this was an audiobook. And the woman who is narrating this book sounds absolutely flustered about 2 chapters into this, because it is so bizarre. It talks a little bit about what Project Serpo is, and a little bit about what the beginning from last week was, where it's the crash, the Roswell crash, which was actually 2 crashes, not 1. The surviving alien, and then a subsequent exchange program. But the weird thing about that whole story, well, other than the story itself, is that they very specifically state that when they find this crashed craft and they see the one alien is like hiding in a culvert and like looking out at them, and they approach it, they offer it food and water. And it accepts the water, but doesn't want the food. And it doesn't try to fight them. It doesn't freak out. They don't freak out. There's no, you'd think if this is your first encounter with the aliens, military or not, you'd be like, what the hell's going on here? There would be some kind of overreaction, you would assume. But there was none of that. It's like they had already known that this could happen, or that it had happened. And that's where this second book comes in, this the one I listened to this week, where they talk about why the Roswell crash was a stroke of luck for the United States and the world, because previously, and they don't really get into how, but the Nazis had their own alien encounter and were either given or obtained alien technology in World War II. It's an absolutely crazy story. Like I said, it was audiobook. I was working, so I didn't have time to jot down names and dates and specific things. But the gist of it, I mean, it took 9 chapters, and I'm still not, we're just getting to the end of this. But the gist of it is there is a Nazi scientist, I believe, who is sent to Japan to bolster their relations. Because as we know, in World War II, Japan and Germany, they worked together. And this guy goes to Japan and is doing the whole diplomatic thing, and is approached by this mysterious group called the Green Dragons, which is like almost like a Japanese mafia, I believe. But they were told to approach him by the group that controls the Green Dragons, which is known as the Green Men. And the Green Men saw an opportunity for Japan to continue its empire and rule the world with the help of Germany. Now, they used occult practices. They were very mysterious. The guy, this German diplomat, soldier, scientist, whoever he was, never got to meet directly with them. If they were there, they were shrouded in cloaks. He never got to see them, so he has no idea who they were. But they would they would give him information, and they would teach him how he could obtain information as well. They send him back to Germany. And this is before really the worst of it starts with in World War II, even before World War II even really gets going. But with the help of these green men, this German guy, this diplomat, winds up going to the government and the military and saying, this is going to happen. And if we react this way, everything will be okay. If we react this way, we'll lose. And they have no idea what he's talking about because these aren't even events that they're even thinking about. Lo and behold, a couple times this happens and he's right. And things play out exactly the way he says. And this gets the attention of a lot of higher ups because pretty handy to have a guy in your pocket who can see the future. And he's getting his information from these green men. Now, the green men were absolutely certain that Germany was the way to go because they could control, they could give them the information. They had the ability to create the weaponry they needed. They had the drive to do the things that needed to be done. But what they never took into account was that Hitler was batshit crazy. And he went off on his own script. So he started making his own decisions, countermanding what the green men were telling him to do. He was just ignoring it. They got him so far, and he thought he was unstoppable. He's like, I've got all this power. I can do anything. And so the reason why everything failed is because he veered away from, he took his own occult path and ignored what they were telling him. At some point during all this, they obtain alien technology. And they start this program that is most commonly referred to as the Bell. And this is an actual project that they know existed. There is a facility somewhere in Germany where there's a bunker in the ground, and then there's this weird silo kind of tower that comes up with what looks like a bell tower on top of it. And they really have no idea what it was for. But people immediately jump to, this is where they're testing this Bell, this German reverse engineered flying saucer. Now, this book goes as far as to say that there were actual photos of the Bell in flight with the Iron Cross on it, like the German symbols on it. I've never seen this. The only thing I've ever seen, the only thing I've been able to find are pictures of a much smaller, very conventionally propelled disc-shaped craft that could fit like one person like standing up.
I've seen
and it was
those.
On a runway.
The ones with fans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had fans under them.
And it looked like a kid's toy, but it was real.
Yeah, it was like a hovercraft basically, but it could fly higher. And if there was any of them that actually flew, I think there may be some footage somewhere. And I don't know if it was the German version of it, if it was an American who was trying to advance the technology. They always had them tethered, and they're always like all over the place, and they weren't stable. But the myth of the Bell just grew and grew and grew. And the Nazis were very into occultism. So it's not really that far-fetched to believe that they would believe they had alien technology if someone told them that's what it was, and they thought they were going to get ahead with it.
Well, I just like to think, again, my brain won't leave the fact that I'd like to be the fly on the wall of the green men's place, where they were really confused that they couldn't control somebody who wanted to take over the world. That's one. And then the second thing is they had the knowledge to control, like they knew how to control certain situations, but they didn't have the knowledge on how to control him. So just to be on the fly on the wall, sitting there where they're trying to tell him and advise him, and it's like, this crazy guy won't do what we're telling him.
Yeah, this crazy guy won't listen to these crazy guys. Now, I think that what they were trying to intimate with all this knowledge was that they could see possibilities of either timelines or other realities and how they played out. And that's what they would base their information off of. Like they couldn't see an exact future, but they could see like the weather men do. You know, they look at a model and it shows them it might do this, it might do that, but this is your best option. So I think that's how they were getting this information. Don't quote me on that. That's kind of what I got from it. But there is also the Germans wound up going to Antarctica, and this is before the war started, and they were setting up a research station in an area called New Schwabenland. Well, that's what they named it. And they created a fairly large facility there, and rumor has it that they found underground, under the ice caverns that had geothermal pools in it that were keeping it warm. And that they were using this, like they had gone down to these levels to be able to keep their facilities warm enough. Because, I mean, the South Pole is freaking cold. And, of course, when the bell disappears, probably because it didn't actually do anything, the belief is that they took this research, they took it to Antarctica, and they proceeded with it in these giant underground caves that are geothermally warmed and all this. And then they say at the end of the war, as the Germans are surrendering, there were, I think, 3 or 4 of their most sophisticated submarines just went missing. They don't know where they went. They know who the captains were. They know what the vessels were, but they never found them, and they don't know where they went. So the belief is that they were actually on their way to Antarctica, taking the last of the people and supplies and information that they could, and that there was a red herring thrown out there that they were going to Argentina instead of South America. Now, there is a German population in Argentina that they're pretty sure are descendants of a group of Nazis that fled to Argentina. Now, they couldn't have done this out in the open because Argentina was against, they were on our side. So it's not like they could have gotten sanctuary there and be like, hey, we're going to come live in your country. They would have had to sneak in or change your credentials or whatever. But the fact is now there are German villages that have a very heavy German ancestry in Argentina. And there's almost no evidence of a German base under the ice in Antarctica. But they talk about these 2 attempts to destroy this base in the 50s, I believe. I think it was in the late 40s, early 50s, where they sent down a group of, I think, Navy or Marines to Antarctica, and they went to a spot where they thought this base was, and they found these caverns, and they walked for miles. Like, I think they said it took them like 10 hours to reach the far back areas of these caves. And when they got back there, they surprised the shit out of all these Germans. They're just like, how did you get in here? And they started firing. Because they knew what was going on. There was a battle that took place, and as they left, they set off the detonated explosives to try to collapse the entrances behind them. They came back to the U.S. They reported what they found, and then they sent it was Admiral Byrd and Admiral Nimitz. They sent them on a 6-month journey down to Antarctica with the goal of annihilating the space. Go back to these coordinates, make sure it's gone, because we're not sure we got them. Now, I didn't look into this because I wasn't writing down the information, so I wasn't gonna go listen to like 6 hours of this audiobook again. But they say that there's, I think, 3 of our vessels vanished. They later on they were in this group, and then later on were decommissioned after years of being nowhere. what they're saying is that as they got close to where his base is, these German Bell ships came out of the ice, came out of the water, and just started blowing the shit out of their ships. They had no defense for them. They couldn't, like, they were like moving in ways they couldn't explain. Our planes were no match for them. And they turned around, they canceled the mission, and they turned around and they left. And the U.S. is like, we've got a problem because we can't defend against this. There's nothing we can do about this. Like, that's technology well beyond what we have. And then there was, before the moon missions, apparently there's some kind of telemetry that shows a rocket or something leaving Earth's atmosphere from the South Pole. Now, how true any of that is, I don't know. I didn't research any of that. But as the final stages of this are going on, is when an electrical storm takes out 2 alien spacecraft in Roswell, New Mexico, and we make basically an alliance with these Ebens. And that's when Project Serpo starts. So we go to Serpo with the intent of getting technology because we need to be able to defend against what the Germans have. And on these many interactions we have with the Eben race, they bring the Yellow Book as a gift.
It's kind of like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy book. Didn't they have a book?
They did have a book, but yeah, maybe something similar. I mean, it had all the information, all the answers in it. Now, the book, like I said, is not an actual book. It is a device, the Yellow Book, and it's very smart because it knows who's reading it. So if you speak fluent English, it shows you the information in English. If you speak fluent Spanish, it shows you in Spanish. I think they said like 9 or 10 languages it could decode. And then there was images and there's all this information. The problem is, and it maybe has something to do with our physiology versus the Eben physiology, because they didn't seem to mention this or say that this could be a problem. But once you start reading it, you can't stop. If you stop reading it and you go back to it, it starts at the beginning again.
Oh,
it can't remember who you are or where you got to. So that's a problem when you're talking about from the beginning of time till whenever.
Yeah, day 1. And then you get distracted by a squirrel. Day 1. Yeah.
Day 1. Yeah. So now remember, the Ebens have no sense of our time. They use a completely different time scale. So everything that we can get from this book, we can't really verify to a time because it doesn't match our time. But the guy who's the anonymous, who is the guy who's sending these posts, one of the DI, they call themselves the DI6, the 6 people who are in charge of all this information in the Defense Intelligence Agency. He said he personally has sat down a few different times for up to 12 hours to read this book. And every time he's got to start from scratch. And there's nothing is said as to whether you can like look at it and just like skip, or if it just shows you this information and then like on its own timed intervals. There's like, imagine if you can't skip.
No, that kind of technology wouldn't last long with me, because I'd be reading it and about 10 minutes in, I'd be like, I wouldn't be able to keep that in my hand. Be like, oh no,
it's.
Or it'd be like, hey, book, can you create a table of contents for yourself? Thank you.
Who knows if they tried that? Who knows? But they say that I think the like 36 hours was the longest anyone was able to sit there and read it, because eventually, like, even if no matter how hard you try, eventually you're gonna pass out. And like it's got to be smart enough that you can look away for a minute and then look back.
Not
But I think it's once
user-friendly.
you end the session
Yeah.
and then you go back. Yeah, then it resets. So I don't know how they got some of the information that they got here from it, but it's very, very interesting. So let me look at this real quick because my notes are a mess. I was just using voice to text as I was reading the book and just blurting things out. So the other day you came over, and when you walked in, I was sitting on my sofa reading this book, and it was like the technical manual of the UFO. I'm trying to read it, and I'm like, I couldn't tell you if any of this was. It's just telling you how the engine works. Like, they don't know what the materials are, but the way it works is it creates ionized air and it changes this. And I'm reading it. I'm like, okay, that's all great, but how do you verify any of this?
You have to build it.
You have to build it, but we don't have the materials. And we don't understand the science or the power inputs. They use like 0-point energy. They got this little box. It's like a little clear box that's got, I think, 2 plates in the bottom. It's filled with a liquid, and there's a little black dot, little bead in the liquid. And when you put it to anything, it doesn't matter what it is. If you connect your computer to it, it generates the exact amount of energy that your computer needs. If you connect it to your house, it generates the exact amount of energy that your house needs. If you connect it to your city, it generates the exact amount of energy that your city needs. And it's different frequencies in this liquid. They can see it like vibrate. There's like little tiny specks in there that will vibrate at like 4 or 5 different intervals to generate this power. And they have no idea what it is or how it works. And I've heard of that before, this silver box or this clear
I've
box.
never heard of that.
You've never heard of that?
No.
But like, again, how do you prove it? There was this guy's like, oh, I got pictures of all this and I'll put them up. And then his email server gets hacked conveniently. So it's like, do you have photos of these? You think by now something would have leaked, especially with all the disclosure and all that's been going on. I think somebody would have, you would think at the congressional hearing, maybe Grush or somebody would have been like, oh, in that whole Project Serpo thing, that was real.
Yeah, it's such a fantastical story that I'm having a hard time not poking fun at it. Like, if you told me that, the energy source was a potato, I'd be like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Potato clock.
Well,
again, I apologize
that was my original,
to make fun of this, but it's very fantastic.
It's unbelievable. It's just what it is. It's absolutely unbelievable. I had the same, when I first started reading this 20 some years ago, I was like, this is just somebody's overactive imagination. But I wasn't reading all of it. As I'm reading this book, there's so much information. And the people that are commenting on it are vetted military, government, and intelligence people that keep saying, we don't know who this anonymous is, but the way he's releasing information, the terminology he's using, it matches. This guy either has done his homework and has researched intelligence, or he's legit. Not saying that his story is legit, but that he is. So is this just this crazy disinformation story? Is there a little bit of something in there? But it's 95% bullshit, and we have some advanced technology that we've come up with, but the best way to hide it is to bury it under craziness. Is that what's going on? So, the Yellow Book, the history of Earth, of the universe, of the Ebens, and of life on Earth, as written by the Ebens.
Day one.
They claim the further this story goes, the crazier it gets. So, they first claimed to have visited Earth over 5,000 years ago. Their species. Their planet, their star is Zeta Reticuli. The star system, it's a binary star system. It's about 38 light years from Earth. They claim they've been coming here. They are able to they can't travel faster than light. They can get close, but then they use some field that warps time, that change, like moves them into a different like zone of time, of space, that allows them to either compress or fold space so that it still takes them 10 months to travel 40 light years, but they're not actually traveling faster than the speed of light. They're changing the distance, basically. It's like some weird, like fifth dimensional kind of, they can change the actual distance. So they've been coming here for 5,000 years, and they at one point say that they planted a human on the planet. Not they created humans, but they planted a human. Now, there in that story from last week, there is talk of them cloning other races. So they had the ability to clone. So I don't know if they used a clone, but they cloned, or they place a human on Earth to implant the knowledge to grow a civilization. And I don't know that it's actually ever said by anyone, but the inference is that this was Jesus. Or that maybe Jesus wasn't real and the story of Jesus was planted by them. Or by this person they planted to create religion to help control people and move them in the right direction.
All right. So 5,000 years ago, civilization's out there. All of a sudden, this guy shows up, clipboard, briefcase, and he's out there trying to push people in the right direction. No. Maybe didn't have a briefcase
or something like that.
Or something like that. Yeah.
He's doing the Family Guy thing where he's like but yeah, so that's what they're claiming. Now this obviously rubs a lot of people the wrong way, because people immediately jump to, oh, you're saying that we're an experiment, or we were put here by them. I didn't read it that way. I just read it that they came here, they were visiting, and maybe saw potential in humanity, in the human species, and wanted to nudge us in the right way. So they did it in a way that they thought was not gonna be that bad. Of course, surprise! Look what we got going on now. Religion was the worst thing they could have done, but yeah. So that's what they did. This book also talks about, again, I can't even go through all of it because it's just like the actual. They don't call it the Big Bang, but the point of creation up to like the explosion. It starts to cool down. Quarks and antiquarks are formed. Quarks and antiquarks annihilate each other till there's only just whatever there's more of survives. They wind up breaking down into protons and neutrons. Atoms are formed. Stars start. Galaxies, like this whole thing, and it's pages and pages and pages and pages in like 10 to the 33rd power seconds after the initial expansion of the universe. Like incredible amounts of information. And again, there's no way that you can look at any of this and prove that any of it is true. Right. So they get to the point of Earth, that they came here, right? I thought this was going to be this incredible vault of knowledge, this yellow book part, because, like I said, I looked ahead just before I recorded last week, and I saw information on dinosaurs, on the fastest dinosaur, the largest dinosaurs. I'm like, did they have it like categorized? Like all this, is that what's in the rest of this book? Because it was 609 pages, this book, and I was only a quarter of the way in. I'm like, well, this is worth reading if this is the information that's in there. I'd love to read this. No, this is the book's confusing. The author of the book took the information from the website per diem and created a book out of it. So the author of the website of the book really only wrote like the first half a chapter, and the rest of it is this website. The website or the mailing list was maintained by this gentleman, Victor Martinez. Victor Martinez got all these releases from this DI6 and then would put it up on the mailing list, and then eventually the Project Serpo or the serpo.org website, which is now defunct. But he would correct for grammar, but he would also, he'd get like an email from him. Imagine reading 600 pages of someone else's emails.
Oh, God, no.
That's what this book was like. But so the anonymous would send this thing about the Yellow Book and give, I don't know, 3 pages of information. There would then be a chapter and a half of information put in from this Victor Martinez about the time periods, the time measurements from like femtoseconds up to like all this stuff. And that's what I saw the week before. Wasn't the actual Yellow Book. It was just this like additional information added in, like additional reading, so you can understand what this 3 paragraphs was. There's like 60 pages and I was like, oh my God, I could have ended this last week. I could have just kept reading for a couple minutes, but it gets better. So we'll jump onto the Red Book, because now remember, the Red Book is the human book that catalogs all of our interactions with ETs and UFOs and things like that. And I'm guessing that these are stories from the Red Book, because it mentions the Red Book, but doesn't specifically say that these are Red Book stories, but they should be. The first story that I read about is, it's a classified project that is, this is what's frustrating with this. This anonymous gives these emails to this Victor Martinez. And then at the end of the email says, this other information, the name of the project, the name of the people, don't release that. So this Martinez has the information, but then he redacts the emails. So it's like Project XXXXXXXXXXXX on in this state XXXXX with these people XXXXX, and it's like, why even bother releasing it? Why give the information if you're not going to allow it to be released? So he's talking about this unnamed classified operation where an alien spacecraft that is approximately 45 feet in diameter is found embedded in the rock layers in question mark. They redact where it was found. They do testing on the rock and on the material of the spacecraft and find that it's been there for 150 to 200 million years.
Wow.
They go into the craft. They find the remains of a species, a humanoid-like species with larger heads. They can't determine if they were Eben or what they were, because they're just skeletons. But they also find remains of what they believe are dinosaurs. That these aliens were coming to Earth 200 million years ago, and they were observing the dinosaurs. There's technology. The ship's in pretty bad shape. It's been here for at least 150 million years. So it's in pretty bad shape, but it's still recognizable. It hasn't like rusted away, whatever materials you're using, but there's evidence of their technology. But of course, we have no idea what any of it is, and we have no idea how to power it. And even if we could power it, it's been around for 150 million years. It's probably not going to work. But so we have this crashed ship showing that they've been coming here for millions and millions of years. The next one they talk about is kind of Serpo related. And it's that the Ebens returned in 2009 in November 2009. They landed at Johnson Island Atoll, I believe in the Pacific. It's a American territory, and had a meeting with the U.S. government and the Pope. And the only information that's really given is that this is supposedly a fairly regular occurrence. Like at least once a year, it seems like the Ebens will come and they'll just touch base with us. And then they go. And then they're like, oh, we'll be back next November. The funny thing is the information they give on this, and this is the only reason why I even put it in here, is the Ebens show up and they bring these 6 technological devices. They don't say what they are. And they give them to the U.S. government. And they give them to like everybody there, and they say, these are for you to learn from and to help contact us and for you to help you learn our technology and how things work. And we're like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And the Pope's like, hey, I got some paintings for you. Just gives them some paintings. And they're like, oh, sweet. Like, we just gave you like all the answers to the universe. You gave us some paintings?
I guess what else are you going to give them?
What? Well, I don't know. You give them a Pope hat or something. They'd be like, I mean, because they look a little bit like Greys. So I just picture, like, remember American Dad? Remember Roger from American Dad? Yeah. Wasn't there an episode where he was wearing a Pope hat?
I'm pretty sure he was, yeah.
That's all I can picture. So, yeah, we give them some paintings, and they get back in their ship, and they're like, all right, we'll see you in a year. Thanks. And they come back in 2010, and then they schedule another meeting for 2012. So apparently, even as recently as 2012, they've been here. Then they talk about Project Tango Sierra. This is where I'm reading these stories, and it's just like, I think this anonymous guy is just like, how crazy can I make this before someone calls bullshit? So Tango Sierra involves U.S. intelligence capturing an alien that was living among us. This occurred in 1980. The story claims that a human woman started being abducted by a non-human man back in 1977. He would take her through this light bubble or light curtain, and when they walked through it, they'd come through to a different place. And he'd show her these holographic images of alien life on another planet, and then he'd bring her back. He wound up giving her this triangular device, never explained what it was for. She was never harmed, and only taken to be shown these images. So this guy would just show up and be like, come on, it's time to go. And he looked human, but she knew he wasn't human. And like, I don't know if she had no, like she had no choice. Like she had to follow him, but they go through this light curtain. He'd show her all this stuff from an alien planet. He'd bring her back and he'd go on his way. So one day this starts really getting to her. This has been going on for 3 years, and she thinks she's going crazy. And she winds up breaking down one day at work and telling a coworker what's going on. And the coworker immediately calls the police because she's like, there's something really bad going on here. She thinks she's being abducted by aliens. Like, this needs to be investigated. So the police get involved immediately. Once the police get involved, I think the CIA shows up and they're like, we got this. Don't worry about it. And the police are like, it's like clearly like abuse or something. And they're like, nope, we got it. Because they've been following the story and they know that these abductions have been taking place, but they've never heard of this human looking man. Yeah, this new one. So they talk to her and she tells her story. They do some investigation. They track the guy down.
they found the guy?
They track him down. Yeah, they find him. She calls him a creature. Was he the creature? No. He did at one point when he abducts her, they go through this light and then this other creature appears who's clearly not human. and imparts some information to her. That's when she broke down. When she's like, I can't do this anymore. And she tells her friend, and then CIA shows up. So this guy is, I guess he's walking around claiming to be an alien. He's like, I'm an alien. He tells somebody he's an alien. So the CIA or whoever is investigating this, they go get the guy, and he doesn't try to run. He just kind of goes, okay, yeah, you got me. I'll go with you. I'll answer any questions you got. So they bring him in. They question him, and he tells him he's from the star system Delta Pavonis, which is approximately 20 light years from Earth. Lives on the fourth planet from their sun. It's roughly the same size as Earth. And his species gets labeled by our scientists as the septiloids.
What are they?
The Anonymous says our scientists have some weird fascination with naming everything something aloid. Like everything's a septiloid, a tantalloid, which just basically means having the appearance of.
Right.
So septa is 7, right? So
yeah.
7
sounds good.
arms or 7 something. They're a shape-shifting race. 7 eyes maybe. So septiloids, they can shapeshift. So he can appear human, or he can appear to be a tree, or he could appear
like a skinwalker.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Like a skinwalker. So answers all their questions. He never tries to escape. They're like, we're going to put you in a cell. He's like, okay. So he's in a cell. And then apparently Jimmy Carter, President Carter, contacts him and says, you got to let him go. And you're like, but he's a septiloid. Like, he's like, no, you need to let him go. So they release the guy. He walks out the door. Gone.
Yep.
Just gone. What they believe is he left the planet. He got caught. He was all right. Well, they know what I'm doing. Time to leave. And off he went.
I'd like to know what he was doing though. Like he's like, hey, come on with me. See that thing over there? That's pretty cool. Look at that. Look at that. You see that? That was pretty cool too. And like that's the whole point of it.
Like what? Teaching people? Like maybe she wasn't supposed to remember? Well, getting people ready for something?
I could understand if it was a psychological test to see if he could break her. How many things could he show her before she breaks?
Now, the other point to that is that there was somebody that was abducting her, and it was a psychological experiment, but it wasn't an alien.
Oh, all right.
Right? I mean, there's plenty of weirdos out there, right? And we're talking the 70s into the 80s. So who knows? I mean, a wall of light you're walking through and you're seeing holographic images of another planet, and this he's a shape-shifting. That sounds a lot like LSD to me.
I was going to say they were doing a lot of testing. A lot of people were doing a lot of testing on random people. So I could understand that.
It wasn't always groups that were doing it. It was just random people that were like, oh, hey, let's see what happens if we give you this.
Well, some of that stuff was even legal back then because it was never around enough to be illegal. So they could have been just people in their labs or getting it from who knows where. So
yeah, well, yeah, and you have there's also what they call the MyLab, right, where it's military abductions. And they're testing people for to see what they're, like you said, how far can you push them before they break?
Right.
It's not unheard of that happens just to like whistleblowers. Let's say, if you see something you're not supposed to see, well, they're gonna push you until you seem crazy, and then no one's gonna listen to what you say. But in order to know how far you have to push somebody, you got to push people.
Right.
So you just pick a random person and all right, let's make her think she's seeing aliens. See what these drugs do to just the average person, just in case we need to. You don't know. And just because some of these people in this group were military and intelligence doesn't mean that they were necessarily privy to information that all branches of the military and intelligence are doing. So some of the stuff could very well have been other projects, like what's the one they always talk about with the LSD?
MK Ultra, was it? Or
MK Ultra. Yeah, that's the one. So like MK Ultra, which it's not a secret anymore. We know it happened. The U.S. government was dosing people with LSD to see what happens. And some people were doing it voluntarily and some people weren't. So you just don't know.
No.
Like, I don't remember what years that was going on, but it was 60s, 70s, right?
Yes.
So could it have been?
Yeah, and you don't know what you don't know. Like, so it could have been, who knows what could have continued or branched off.
Yeah. So again, a lot of these stories are like, were some of these stories planted in there to see if people just believed everything? I don't know. Now, the last story that I read before my brain was like, I can't handle any more of this. This guy brings up actually a very good point. And I believe it was anonymous, one of the anonymous, because I think they rotate it through who was actually sending these emails, because the tone in the emails is different. Sometimes the emails are very, hey, here's this information, we're glad you have it. Sometimes it's like, hey, you're asking a lot of questions. So the tone changes. So I think it's different people. So at this point, whoever is anonymous at this point, ask the question: if the dinosaurs are around for 185 million years, and we base intelligence off of brain size to body size ratio, and we look at some of the cranial cavities of dinosaurs that we found, we can safely assume, we don't know exactly how their brains work, so maybe the same thought process doesn't work, but we can safely assume that there were some possibly sentient level dinosaurs just based on their brain size to their body size. So at least very smart.
Right.
Is it possible that a race of dinosaurs could have gained sentience and been smart enough to have left the planet?
Well, if you're looking at...
Because there's a lot... You and I have talked about this, that if there was a civilization prehistory,
right,
we would never know.
You're talking...
Especially if there was...
Millions of years ago?
Millions of years ago.
Right.
Especially if there was like the KT boundary event, the Younger Dryas event, or any of these cataclysmic events, the ice ages would have wiped cities clear. We would never even know they were there. There's a lot of reports. People claim that they see these reptilian aliens, right? And we call them the Saurian race, right? These lizards. Now, I'm pretty sure that comes from sci-fi, because I can just think of like Doctor Who, where the lizard people live inside the Earth.
Or if you think of,
aren't they called the Saurians?
I know, I've heard it. Well, Land of the Lost had the Slee Stacks. That was in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you go back far enough, there were black and white, or not even TV. I'm sure you could find
radio shows.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But is it possible that some of these reptilian aliens aren't actually aliens? And this will kind of tie back to the recent this year disclosure, where Grush says he refuses to call them extraterrestrial, just non-human, like they're non-human craft. What if it is some race of dinosaurs or some intelligent reptilian species from hundreds of millions of years ago that did leave the planet and are coming back. They're not extraterrestrial. They're from Earth. They're just coming back.
Well, and
they're non-human terrestrial beings.
That's where you have one of those fun logic experiments. So it's like, okay, there were creatures here 100 million years ago. That's a given. Yeah, we know that. Something else happened, and then we came up, but you don't know what happened. Could they have evolved? No. Could there have been a civilization? Yeah, there could. Like, we would never have any idea that anything was here before. No. And maybe they went underground. Like, maybe they're like, oh, well, we'll keep a base here or there.
They went to the ocean.
Yeah.
Underwater. Because when you look at a lot of ancient cultures, there are some very weird depictions of other beings.
Well,
we don't know what they could possibly mean, but could it be tied to it?
And I like to, it's fun to think about reptilians or dinosaurs or whatever you want to call them, but the Earth's been around a long time. It could have been anything. Like, literally, there could have been any other form of life that could have evolved. And if you're talking like 100 million years, something else, some other form of life could have evolved like us and got off planet or under planet.
Under planet?
Like the ant...
maybe they just got wiped out.
Right. Like the ant beings that I think the Hopi are in the Hopi legend and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Ant-Man. Yeah. And they lived underground, and they came from underground and then went back underground and took the Hopi with them to save them from a cataclysm, according to their stories. So there's a lot of weird stories like that you could kind of tie into it. So it's one of those things where, do I think the Project Serpo story is true? I don't even think it's like a 0.1% true. Could there be some real information in there? Yes. Maybe not portrayed, heavily masked real information. Like, do I think that we have technology that is beyond what we're told? Absolutely. I think to not believe that is crazy. Do I think we have a secret space force? To
me,
it's a cool thought. But
it is a cool thought.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that would have leaked by now. If we had a couple thousand people living on space carriers
or on the moon. Yeah, I think somebody would have saw that. But this, to me, there's a lot of these stories, and I don't know. I can't remember the verbiage. I can't remember what the terminology is. But if you're having leaks, you would spread information, various different kind of information to various different kind of people, and then you sit back and wait to see what you hear back, because it'll come back.
See where it leaks from,
and then you could find out where it came from. So that, to me, I think is probably pretty standard in a lot of pretty much anything organized. I don't even want to say governments. Just so. To me, you might have a fantastical story like this. Maybe there are some very light truths in there that really wouldn't be a problem if they came to light.
Yeah, like there's clearly something going on, just because with what's going on with like disclosure and these things that are being seen and reported. I don't know what they are. I don't know what they could possibly be. Is it extraterrestrial? Is it interdimensional? Is it some weird natural phenomenon that we've never encountered? Is there a breakaway civilization on the planet? Like that was where they were headed with the Nazis that went to Antarctica. And I've heard this story before, that there's a group of people who broke away, and their technology is more advanced than ours, but not by a whole lot, because they're still working with the same materials that we have. But there always seems to be something that's just beyond what we have.
That to me sounds the most plausible. Only because we know humans and humans like power. And yes. if you think about, if you follow history back as far as you can, if people had power and they figured out a way to keep that power and keep that control, they're going to figure it out. And then if you think about generation after generation after generation, it's plausible that you could have people that figured out a way. And breakaway civilization sounds, again, like I would be surprised. You could say that if you said there was a breakaway civilization amongst us, so they didn't really break away.
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. You know, it doesn't, and not like they're off in a corner of the planet somewhere.
Well, yeah, because where would that be? You know, where could you possibly hide? Now, if you are that powerful and you've got that kind of pull, you could be just outside of, like, you could be just up in the mountains somewhere and have enough pull to have those satellite feeds changed to where no one would ever see you. You know, so yeah, I don't know that it's a breakaway. You know, I know sometimes the story goes to, they broke away, so they made spaceships and they left the planet, and you know now they're coming back. Again, that's a big jump. But could they have technology at their disposal that they could disguise as like we wouldn't know? Like if you see someone walking down the street and they've got what looks like a phone, but it's something completely different, you're not going to look and see what they're doing. You're not going to pay attention that close. So they could literally be right around us all the time and just using stuff that looks very similar to what we have until they know there's no one around and they pull out they hit a button and it turns into like a holographic screen or something. You know, it's like, could that be? And then they seed some of that technology to the rest of us, to the tech industry, and then they let that come out slowly, and then we catch up, and then it gives them time to fund their next thing that they're working on. You know, they maintain a power of sorts, and it can kind of be amongst civilization, but still be above it and beyond it.
I mean, I would be in a cabin somewhere. It's like,
yeah, you'd never see me again.
I have power, and I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about working a day job or 2 or 3 in today's world. And you know, where would I be? I mean, I guess some people would want to be in the middle of a city. You put me next to a pond in the mountains.
Yeah, because the big thing about stories like this that always pop out at me are, if these beings are coming here with the best interest of humanity, why have they not just shown up? Why are they going to these secret locations to talk to these governments that they know aren't doing what they could possibly do? They're taking this knowledge, like if they come here and they're like, hey, here's this device that creates free energy for your people, right? And you're like, we did a good thing. We'll be back in a year to see how you're doing with that. And you come back in a year and that thing's nowhere to be found. And you're like, hey, that was here, right? We gave you we'll give you another one. We thought we dropped it over here. You plug this into your grid and everybody's got power. You'll be fine. You come back a year later and it's gone again. You're like, what the? You're not disseminating this information. Next time we show up, we're just going to show up like over a city and be like, hi, we've been giving you government stuff. And like, what are they going to do? What would we possibly do?
Yeah.
What would the government do if that happened? Like, they couldn't stop them.
Well, no. But on the flip side, why wouldn't that happen? I mean, we have a society where it's going to happen soon, actually. Every year, people really freak out about what's on a cup from a coffee place. Oh my God, I can't believe they put this cup on the thing with the cup and so I don't know what would happen if you completely dissolved people's image of what reality is.
I know that's always used as an excuse, but I can point you to one fairly recent event that should have shattered so many people, and that's 9/11. And people didn't panic, they didn't break down, they got their heads out of their asses, and for a brief time, everybody stuck together.
That's true.
So to say that people would just, because remember shortly after 9/11, there was, I think it was an earthquake in Canada that disrupted a power grid that shorted out the main power grid going to New York City. I remember the day this happened because I was walking in my house from the store. I walked in the kitchen and the lights, it was like a brownout. The lights went, boom, boom, and I was like, oh, that was weird. Like it made a weird sound in the, like it was like everything like, Pulse. It was like someone took a pan.
Yeah.
It was like, pong, but you could hear it through the powers. Like this, dong. It was like this really massive event. New York City was out of power for like 3 days. This is after 9/11. That is the prime time when people should have absolutely lost their shit because it's like another attack. Nobody knew. They had no way of knowing what actually happened because everything was down. And it didn't happen. People came out of their houses. They went in the street. There was no riots. There was no fights. There was no looting. Everybody went, oh, okay, this is happening. And he stuck together so that everybody's just going to go, oh, aliens are here, and they're going to freak out. I don't see it happen. You're going to get some people that's going to happen because they're programmed to freak out over everything. But I think the sheer shock of it is going to be enough to snap people out of it just long enough to realize what's going on and just long enough for it to become normal. And then they'll slowly freak out about it because shock is a funny thing. And yeah, you could just have an all out panic attack and some people will, but I don't think civilization will just go crazy if that were to happen. And if they're that powerful, I bet they got a way to show up and like have a little beam that comes out and just like, hey, everybody calm down. Just calm down. Don't freak out. You're fine. And honestly, the people that freak out and go run off into the woods and disappear, good. We don't need them anyway. We don't need those people anymore. We need to calm the fuck down. So let's let the aliens come and let the crazy people do their crazy things. And again, if they're that powerful, all right, there's reports, and they talk about this in Disclosure. There's reports of like the Minuteman sightings, the Minuteman missile incidents, where these things showed up over nuclear silos and deactivated our missiles, completely overrode our systems. Now that is common knowledge, even if you don't believe it. It's common enough knowledge that if you're going to freak out over something, that's something you should freak out about. So if somebody were to have some really bad reaction to aliens showing up and be like, well, we're just going to nuke them, it wouldn't happen because they'd just be like, no, you're not. We're just going to neutralize those things for a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. I'd be more worried about, people freaking out. Like just the average everyday people.
They freak out anyway.
They do.
They freak out anyway. They want to change the name of the like some stars and some the Magellanic clouds because Magellan was a bad guy.
Oh, he's a bad guy now?
Well, I mean,
I don't know. I actually don't know. I haven't studied Magellan in a long time.
I mean, everybody was a bad guy back then. Everybody was trying to colonize everything. So they came to South America and they just like ransacked South America, and that was a lot of that was due to him. But it was a different time back then. And we got to stop worrying so much about what people did back then, whenever it was and whoever it was. We got to stop worrying about that and really pay attention and worry about what we're not taking care of now because we're so worried about the past.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So I'm ready for the aliens to come. Oh, and they did it again.
What happened again?
Mexican Congress held another meeting.
No, they didn't, did they?
Yes, they did. They didn't bring the little mummies out this time. And I haven't watched it. I haven't even looked for it because I don't know if I want to sit through another one of those. But what's his name?
I can't remember his name.
Jose, that guy. He he brought test results. The institution, the college that I messaged,
right?
They never got back to me, but they came out and said, "Look, we don't know about the ones that he's showing, but the ones that we studied for 4 years. They were complete beings. They weren't human. We don't know where they came from. We're not saying they're aliens, but they weren't pieced together. They were not fake. The ones that we have were real." There's other scientists that have looked at these mummies saying they're not pieced together. They were complete creatures. We don't know where they come from, but they're not human. I haven't looked into any of this because I'm 95% sure that the ones that went to that Inkari Institute, right? No, that wasn't the Inkari Institute. Whichever the institute in Peru was. I'm pretty sure they knew that the one had like fingers ripped off of it, that they were just people, that they're humans. And now they're saying that they're non-humans. That Thierry Yamin is now, when it first came out, he was like, "I want nothing to do with this. You guys stole those mummies." All of a sudden, he's back to, "Yeah, look what we found. We found these mummies." It's also crazy, and it doesn't help anybody with anything.
I didn't hear anything about it.
They need to. I heard about it like a month ago that there was going to be another hearing, and then I just saw something pop up the other day, and it basically, that's all. It was exactly what I said. They did it again. That's basically the headline. They didn't bring him out this time. And it wasn't really a UAP hearing. It was just about these little mummies.
I'm going to have to look at it.
I really, if there's anything to it, if there is some kind of weird species that we had on the planet, maybe it's the saurians, maybe it's the advanced dinosaurs from the past. If there is something to it, I want them to release those bodies to, or even have like an international team of scientists show up, document it, and let them look at them, because they're very picky about who they let look at them, because they know these people are going to back them up, and that's not. You gotta let people who are skeptical come and look at them and be like, because if you get someone skeptical who goes like, this is a doll, and all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, this is real. That's huge.
Right.
And if you've got something that's real, if I was trying to tell you that this was like water from Venus or something like that, and I was trying to sell it to you, and you're like, no, it's not, I want somebody to test it, and I knew it was water from Venus, I'd be like, find me the most skeptical person you got. Test it. That's water from Venus. I wouldn't be like, nah, I'm going to let my guy look at it. You know? If you got nothing to hide, then you shouldn't be hiding stuff.
The only thing I wouldn't do is give it to the Smithsonian, because then it would just disappear.
No.
It would just...
They don't make things disappear. I will never forget the show I saw where, I forget what they were talking about, but it's in one of the Smithsonian buildings, and they're talking to this like adjunct professor or something who was teaching, and his office was in this building. And on the shelf behind him, he had like 6 huge skulls that were like human skulls, but they were like double the size of a human. They were not apes. They were red hair. There's like red hair on them, and they're sitting on a shelf. And he's going, "No, there's no such thing as giants. They're right behind you. Like literally, they're sitting on your desk."
Yeah,
and then
that was fascinating to see that.
Like I forget what they were even talking about. It might have been that show they did about using science to prove or disprove biblical stories, where they were talking about.
But it didn't have
like the Vatican.
Yeah, it didn't have anything to do with giants, though, right? It just happened to be some guy. It was just some guy with giant skulls.
Just some guy, and he had giant skulls. But like,
and you're like even looking at it, and you're like,
the same guy they interviewed for another show about giants. He's like, "No, we don't have anything like that." And I'm like, "I just saw you in another show, and the skulls were on your desk."
Yeah,
and there was like 6 of them. Like, that wasn't because there was a human skull next to him, and there's like these big freaking skulls. Yeah. The Smithsonian makes things disappear.
Yeah, there's like
I know
there's a warehouse somewhere. You know, you open it up,
guarded by top men. Top men. Yeah, or somebody buys them, and there's some rich guy like Bezos or somebody has like a room, and there's like he's got like an alien in there, just stitching together little fake mummies to sell to Peru. Like,
well, we all know that goes.
Who knows?
So, there are some very wealthy people that probably forgot to even have things. Oh, yeah. or they never even saw it. It's just in storage somewhere.
Yeah, they bought it. And they're just like, yeah, I want to have that. Do you know what it is? Don't care. Just put it in storage.
Right.
I own it now.
Yep.
Yeah, they don't care. So yeah, maybe I'll look at the last Mexican mummy thing, but I don't know if I want to get back into that because that was a lot of work.
Well, I'll look.
That was so much work.
I'll let's see if I can find anything on the internet.
But I'll look for some links. I'll just send them all to you. You can cover it this time.
No, that's okay.
you can watch the 4-hour YouTube, translate it from Spanish to English. Oh my God, that was so hard to watch. That was so hard to watch. That was bad. And then the whole part where they listened to who they wanted to talk to, and then they start bringing on like the Japanese guy and this Russian guy and all these people, and there's all the translators had left, so they're just talking. Everybody's looking around like, what are you saying? It was so bad. Yeah, but yeah, so that's Project Serpo. It's a cool story. It's a cool story, and it's something that I've heard about for so long. I just had to really look into it, but there's so many side alleys to that story. Like I said, the one book I never even got to the actual Project Serpo was 9 chapters of Nazis, and I'm like, what? Am I on the right book? I had to keep on looking. I'm like, no, it's the right book. Like, what are they talking about? And then they'd say something about aliens. I'm like, oh, okay. And then they'd go back to Nazis for like an hour. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I never actually completely read the other book either. I just got to a part where I was looking for the headings, like where Anonymous was sending stuff, because it just became like 20, 30 pages of additional notes about dinosaurs and particle physics, and I'm like, I don't like this has nothing to do with anything. So I'm just like, turn the page. Oh, okay. Oh, they shot one. Okay, turn the page. Oh, that one's a shapeshifter. Turn the page. Yeah, it got pretty bad. And I got to that last one, and I was like about the dinosaurs, and I'm like, I'm out. This got too crazy.
It was a story, all right.
Dinosaurs in space.
Yeah,
definitely a story.
Yeah.
I wanted to find something that's a little lighter for the next episode. It's
not so complicated.
This is like,
yeah.
This is episode 14. I have done probably 8 massive stories that my brain is just like buzzing by the time I'm done reading everything. I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know how to do this. I just want like a fun Bigfoot story or something.
You can never go wrong with a fun Bigfoot story.
You can't go wrong with a fun Bigfoot story. But I don't know. Well, I'll find something that's a little less. It doesn't require reading an encyclopedia and listening to 9 hours of Nazis.
Yeah, that's awful heavy.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sticking around and making it all the way through the Project Serpo story. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, you can go back and listen to it. You can kind of keep them separated, but definitely recommend going back and hearing the craziness of our mission to Zeta Reticuli. If you have anything you want to hear us cover, you can reach us at podcast@primitiveintelligence.com. And I've also got the Facebook page, and there's Instagram. We've got all the fun stuff, and the YouTube channel. That's all I got. You got anything to wrap up? Any words of wisdom about the dinosaur aliens and Mexican mummies?
Yeah, if you stumble upon a cave with some Mexican mummies or an old spaceship with dinosaurs, just do yourself a favor and walk the other way.
Send us an email. I want to see it. That's all I got. Talk to you next week. See ya.
Thanks.